All right, looks like got most of the people um, on now, so we should probably get started. Um, so April is out this week and has asked us to kind of run the community meeting in her absence. So that's why you're seeing me rather than April. And the link to the agenda is in the chat for anyone who has just joined, and we'll get started. So first off, just a couple of announcements, and for that, I'll turn it over to Mike Stowe from Tiger.
All right, thanks, Spike. And I just want to reiterate what Spike said regarding April. I've actually known April for several years, one of the nicest people I've ever met, and so I know she really wishes she could be here for this, but unfortunately had a family situation come up, so I definitely miss her. But she will be back, I believe, next week. So in terms of announcements, one thing we're really excited to announce here at Tigera is we're actually releasing Istio training. So now available on Tigera.io is an introduction to service mesh with Istio and Kubernetes. And so if anybody knows
Sorry, it looks like you might have pressed the wrong key. Please press 1 now if you'd like us to send this phone a free text to say that you called.
So if you're looking for somebody who is looking for training, or knows somebody who's looking for training,
sorry, it looks like you pressed the wrong key. Please hang up and try again. Thanks for calling, and goodbye.
Or someone who wants to use a service mesh or is having issues with the wrong key, this training is available on Tigera.io. Any questions about the training can be directed to myself at mike@tigera.io, or Tom, who's sitting next to me here at TB. So letter T as in Tom, letter B as in Blossom at Tigera.io. And that's all we have, Spike.
All right, cool. So we have some project updates. Is Quat on the phone?
Yeah, I'm here.
Awesome. Do you want to give us an update from Istio pilot?
Sure. We had a lot of activity last month or so since last community call. There's been changes to the configuration model. Now we're using CRDs instead of TPRs, just like the rest of Istio. And we also added a lot of support for alternative service discovery services. So we have basic integration working with console, and there's a prototype working with Eureka. There's a demo of console with pilot, I think, by Greg. He's on the call here. And we also improved the model itself. We had egress rules to formalize whitelisting of external services, so we can avoid doing the extra hop to egress proxy. Yeah, that's about it. We're just trying to improve the overall code quality before the release, making sure everything works together.
Do we know when the release is going to go out, or is
we have a series of release candidates planned, so we're gonna try to improve the situation of continuous release cycles. We have release already out, and there's one coming any day now, but that might not be the final one. So
yeah, we'll have at least one release cut today. There will probably be multiple more, like Kuat said, before we actually get to the real 0.2 release.
Yeah, and there is a community testing on Monday, that if folks are interested to try out the latest master branch, the release candidate, we'd be very happy to have folks test those and give us feedback on the docs and the installation, the user experience, and things that we can actually improve. Maybe not major features, but actually at least minor tweaks can definitely be done.
Any quick questions about the update from Quat? All right. Is Douglas on the phone?
I am indeed. Hello, everyone.
Cool. Give us an update from Mixer.
Yeah, so I think some point during this cycle, Mixer had sent out the 0.2 design doc for the adapters, and we have followed along with that design, and we are almost done with the implementation of everything in that design. We've transferred all of the existing adapters over to the new model, and that includes defining templates for new mesh functions to match the old hard-coded, what we called aspects. So we've done that for all adapters except for preprocessed adapters, and we just haven't finished the work necessary for preprocessed adapters, and so we don't think that's going to happen with the initial 0.2 release, but will follow quickly after. We've also switched over, similar to Pilot, to using CRDs for our configuration, and so we have a new model for configuration, and we're updating the website and tasks now to reflect that configuration, and hopefully that will all be there by the end of today or tomorrow. Not to put any pressure on my fellow documenters on updating the documentation. And let's see. The other thing I did want to mention is all of the, or not all of the, a lot of the mixers that work at Google will be gathering in Seattle at the end of next week, and we're hoping to get a community event organized. So if that's something that you'd be interested in joining or finding out about, please let me know here in the chat, or send an email to Istio Integrations, and we'll try and make sure that we can get something set up, because we'd love to interact with people and talk about all the changes that happened with Mixer and what we think is going to happen next. So that's sort of my update.
Cool. Is Tao on to talk about Istio Auth?
You're muted, Tao.
Can you guys hear us?
Yeah, now we
can you guys hear me? Okay. So for Istio Auth, we have several options, several updates. We support raw VMs, and the way we distribute the key and certificate is different. For raw VM, we use a node agent. So basically, it's an agent running on each raw VM. We create so this node agent create a private key and public key pair and generate CSR to the Istio CA. And then the CA sign it, the certificate is sent back to node agent. So in this way, the private key will never leave the node. And we repeat this process periodically to do the rotation. So in the future, we plan to do this for Kubernetes as well, because currently we're still using a secret volume mount for key and certificate provision, which is considered not secure. And also, we have another update is we support the TLS traffic. For TLS support have for TCP traffic, and also we achieved we have another PR to achieve persistent CA key and storage. So right now it's for self-signed CA, the key and cert is generated in memory, so it's not persistent. So the idea is to write the key and cert into the certificate, so into the secret. So whenever the CA gets crashed or restarted, so we'll still see the same key and cert. So in this way, the key and certificate in the node agent will still work. That's pretty much update for 0.2, and we still have a lot of things to do for 0.3.
Cool. Any questions about auth before we move on? Well, we'll have time for lots of general questions at the end, but any clarifications on what we just got? All right. Sriram, do you want to give us an update on Proxy?
Yeah, sure. So we had a few of changes in Proxy. We ordered up a lot of in-house code that we were actually using for thread pooling and or gRPC libraries, and we started using the JSON libraries. Some of the features that we actually added include the ability to turn on metrics but turn off policy checks and vice versa, so that you can actually you can deploy the mixer and use metrics for all internal services and turn on the policy checks only for setup services. So that is one of the key things. And then we have also added support for in Envoy itself, we've added support for talking to headless services. This is one of the pain point that was there in 0.1.6. So we've added some features within Envoy, and we're taking advantage of those features when configuring Envoy in Pilot, such that today you can go and deploy your stateful sets with Kafka, Zookeeper, you name it, record it, and it will work. So that's another big feature. And of course, there's support for WebSockets in Envoy, and we've actually added that as well into the proxy and hence Pilot.
Great.
That is about it. Yep.
Any questions about Proxy?
I actually have a question about previous topic. Did that work that you just talked about making into 02, or is that like slated for 03?
Which one? Oh, not.
Like the agent for auth.
That would be in the next release. Oh, that's actually already in the release. You can try out the release candidates.
Awesome, thank you.
All right. Is Kostin on the call?
Yes, I am, but I'm afraid the demo will be postponed. We have some technical difficulties.
Okay, fair enough. All right, we'll reschedule that for a later call. Greg, are you on?
Yep, here I am.
Do you want to give us a demo on Istio on Docker with console?
Yep, I can get that up. Let me know if you can see my screen.
Yep.
All right. So at this point, I already have all my containers up and running here. And for those of you not familiar with the book and code demo that Istio has become famous for, you have a product page, a ratings, reviews, and details microservices, and different versions of this reviews service. Product page collects information from all those services and displays it in one spot. And reviews here, there are 3 different versions. And depending on the version, it'll call this rating service to get a variety of stars to display with the review. Now, in terms of getting Istio running on Docker, let's see, we have a standalone API server here, and our Istio pilot discovery service running here for collecting all of our service information. And that service information is being populated by console here. And all those services are conveniently being registered automatically by an open source project called Registrator. All right. And so right now, as it is, I have the IP for my product page container. I'm just going to go over here. And so there's the details, the reviews, and the stars. And since I currently do not have any rules set, you can just see the default load balancing behavior of Envoy working to proxy between the different reviews versions. So there's no stars, black stars, and red stars. And so I'm going to create a rule here using Istio CTL. To default to a specific version of the reviews microservice, specifically the one with no stars. And you can see just refreshing over and over again, no stars. And now let's say I wanted to create a, actually let's create a rule so that I only see red stars first. So I'm going to use the Istio CTL command. And I'm using the replace command because I'm updating an existing rule for a particular microservice. And so I'm going to go back to my web page here, and sure enough, red stars. And if I wanted to make things a little bit more interesting, I could create a header-based rule for use microservice so that I only get black stars if I'm logged in as a specific user. All right, so as you can see, still have the red stars, and I'm just going to sign in over here. And sure enough, there's the black stars. And if I sign out again, I go back to red. And
if you're not familiar with the book info demo, there are a few other example rules for testing default or for faults and delays and traffic split. And those are all available out there on the Istio.io website. And that can be also done on this console demo. And that's about it for me. Any questions?
So you mentioned that Registrator was open source. Are the other pieces that you used for this demo, are they open sourced and out there?
Yes, everything. So there's the etcd server, which is just the backend storage for the Kubernetes API server. So the Kubernetes API server is just one component of Kubernetes, and it's just running in standalone without those other components. And so that's just available out there, an image that you can pull from Docker Hub. And yeah, Registrator, also another open source project. It's just a matter of running the desired microservice container with the Istio pilot process inside there so that it starts up a proxy so that you can reach the individual microservices in your application.
What did you do to set up the IP tables rules, denatting rules that are necessary to transparently forward everything through the proxy?
Yep, that's part of the Docker file that I have for each of the microservices. So there is a prepare proxy script that we use to define the IP tables for all traffic and for a specific user. And yep, that is out there in our repo, and it works in Docker and Kubernetes.
So the difference between this and the Kubernetes approach is that all the processes are inside of one Docker container as opposed to being separate containers in a pod. Do I have that right?
They're all separate Docker containers rather than using basically the Kubernetes pod setup.
I mean, to clarify, it's the sidecar and the application in the same container. That's what he means. So it's not, so it's one service per container, and sidecar and the application, the service runs from the same container.
Right, okay. So the IP tables rules are being written into the same Docker container as the application process is being run.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
That's a difference from the Kubernetes model. Okay, thank you.
If you haven't already done so, can you paste a link to any of the documentation or repos for this into the notes document for the call today?
Yes, I can.
Awesome. All right. Any other questions on that?
So the motivation for that then is just the
I think you cut out there.
Yeah.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Is the motivation then just to reduce any network latency between the sidecar and the service? Putting it in the same container, why?
Oh, this is just for the purpose of the demo, actually. So,
Just
I mean,
for the demo. Okay.
yeah, so in reality, like, you may or may not be running Docker Compose with console. I mean, you might be running console in your VMs or wherever you want to, right? And so the idea is that you co-locate the sidecar with the application process. So, and then the IP table rules is just another convenience thing to automatically reroute all traffic via the sidecars.
Yeah, so it's proof of concept to show that you don't need Kubernetes in order to run everything. You can pick just with a standalone API server
Got it.
and a different service registry. You can accomplish the same thing that you were doing in Kubernetes.
Got it. Okay.
All right. Any other questions on the demo? All right. Next on the agenda, we have Shannon Cohn. Want to talk about Cloud Foundry efforts toward adoption. I'm not sure if that's a for discussion or whether we have announcements.
Hi, this is Shannon.
Hey.
It's more of a brief introduction into Cloud Foundry's journey so far with regard to the Istio project, introducing Cloud Foundry's use cases to the project's community, and our intentions for collaboration. So I think I have Gabriel Rosenhaus, who's an engineer on the Cloud Foundry project. I'm a product manager for routing and load balancing in Cloud Foundry. I know that this project was born out of Kubernetes use cases, but to provide a brief summary of Cloud Foundry to provide context for our use cases, Cloud Foundry's primary goal is to enable developer velocity. We abstract the burden of operations as much as possible from app developers so they could focus on pushing code. Cloud Foundry is very large and multi-tenant. It's popular with government agencies and Fortune 500 enterprises. We assume that, well, we have to support air-gapped environments. And let's see, what else would I say about it? As a sense of scale, Cloud Foundry's been tested with 250,000 containers under management by one cluster. We support tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of tenants. And so most of what we do is targeting that kind of scale and multi-tenancy. We've had several discussions so far with folks in the Istio project. Most recently, Sriram gave us some of his time. It was a very valuable conversation. We talked about enhancements that we'd like to contribute as far as pilot validating the identity in a certificate in order to enforce a filtered response to one envoy or a set of envoys for a given application. We're very interested in the work to remove Kubernetes as a dependency. We're targeting pilot initially, and the work that we've already done actually is, or is in flight, is to deploy envoys with every container for the purposes of a service mesh. We're interested in leveraging Istio both for north-south and east-west traffic, as well as using that API for service discovery. And look to collaborating with the community in coming weeks.
I just want to add one thing, which is that maybe the biggest architectural difference between the way that Cloud Foundry is imagining using Istio and the way that it seems to be envisioned with Kubernetes is that with Cloud Foundry, we expect that a single Istio control plane would be accessed by many mutually untrusting tenants. And so we're interested in adding multi-tenancy support into the control plane in order to support that use case. And so the initial work we're talking about with having the pilot validate the identity of the envoy that it's connecting to is a first step in that direction. But we imagine we'll have to plumb through other sorts of things elsewhere in the control plane as well.
Great. Any questions or discussion on that? All right. We also have some time at the end just for kind of general Q&A. There's a lot of Istio developers on the call. So what do people have for questions?
I'm curious if someone has a way of working with Bazel and Go and Vim that they really like that they could document so I could look at.
Kuat has one.
Sure, I'll document.
But that's secret, so you will not sell it for money. You'll only sell it for money.
Yeah. I'll put it out somewhere.
It's proprietary.
Yeah, we can. So we have a process that we use to set up using Bazel to build and then symlinking everything into the normal Go project structure. I believe that that's documented around, but I'll go make sure that it is.
Yeah, I was able to get that part working. What I wasn't able to do was get reliable sort of source code stuff inside of my Vim in terms of it, making it aware of where everything was. That might be more of my setup than an issue with.
Yeah. For what it's worth, I know at least a lot of people in the Mixer team use Gotland, the IntelliJ or JetBrains
okay.
Go IDE.
Cool. Maybe I'll ping someone about that.
Do you move it into the have to move it into the normal Go tree in order to use Gogland, or have people figured out a way to like get Gogland to understand that there's this Bazel dependencies?
No, so we do move it into the normal kind of Go tree where Go expects things to be, and then we have a script that makes symlinks from vendors into Bazel's external packages, and that way both of them coexist. And then it even so Vim works pretty similar to that. They all use the external tools anyway.
Yeah, I just basically use Go standard tooling, right?
Could you send that in the chat or out on one of the mailing lists?
Okay, we should probably just document it on Istio as well.
Yeah, I think maybe the developer workflow on GitHub, like the developer or contributor guide there says something about it. But we'll make sure it's well documented, and we'll email it out probably to the core mailing list as well.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Or the Istio dev mailing list. Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say the dev mailing list probably. Cool. Any other questions?
I have one for Sriram, and let me know whether I should take this to the Envoy list. But we have an infrastructure, as we've discussed, for managing and rotating certificates that are unique to a container. And I think one of the challenges we'll be interested in resolving is being able to hot rotate those certificates in Envoy.
Yeah, I think that feature is a to-do in Envoy. So today what we do, that's the reason we have this pilot agent, which basically monitors that file path, and anytime one of the certificate files change, it does a hot reload of Envoy. But the ability to like watch a particular directory, and whenever the certificate files change, automatically reload them, that is a to-do in Envoy, and it's just that somebody has to pick up the task and do it. But
I think sorry, this is Tom here. I think there's a guy called Peter. He's working on this feature. It's called Key Discovery Service, KDS. I'm not sure if he's on the call, but I think he can definitely give more context. So I think the idea is to provide this key as a key and certificate as an API. So every time we don't need this to load it from file, and every time we need it, we just call it. So we can automatically achieve this rotation. We don't have to have a pilot agent to hot restart the Envoy.
But will the certificates be hosted remotely?
Yes. Not remotely, because the provider, the API can be local agent. We have a node agent, so that one can actually be the host of the API. So for the KDS, so it's sort of a local call. But that's the good thing is that we don't have to restart this proxy to reload the key and the certificate.
Why not just from the disk, write out a new file from the disk?
Yeah, because the node agent right now is it's like a dedicated service to generate key and search from the CA, and it also provides this API to the Envoy. So directly call this API, and this is local traffic. We can it's safer. So that's how we do it. I mean the plan.
I can imagine an API being useful for some use cases. In Cloud Foundry, we already have the infrastructure in place to rotate those certificates on the file system.
But Shreeram, you said that the plan is for both of those mechanisms to be available, right?
Yes, yeah. So I mean, the key discovery mechanism will only work as long as you have something that can serve out certificates over a local host loopback connection. So the need for monitoring a file system and loading certificates, that is also in the plan. It's a to-do, and somebody has to just make that one up and do it. But it is definitely in the plan, actually.
Shriram, earlier this week when we talked, we discussed how we might collaborate with Istio projects. Can you give us some guidance as to how we might do the same with Envoy?
That is pretty simple. I mean, it's like PRs are welcome on the Envoy front, so it's much more smaller and focused. So just file an issue, and now probably there's already an issue, and then Matt will probably give you implementation sketch if you wanted one, or if you already know your way around the code, then you can just go ahead and contribute. If not, he can give you an implementation sketch, and we'll be there. Like there'll be a lot of people who can actually like help out in terms of reviews and feedback and so on.
That's great. So we can go find an existing issue, assuming there is one, and find out, and we can ask whether somebody's already working on it. And,
yeah, there is such an issue, and I think at least I'm tracking it, so we can talk a little bit more offline, Shannon.
Thank you,
Can you
Shriram.
post the PR or issue link in the chat, please, if you have a reference for it?
Yeah, I'll do that right now.
So quick question. When you said you're going to run Envoy in the same Cloud Foundry container, so is it like two processes running inside a container in the Cloud Foundry model?
So in the current sort of proof of concepts that we're playing with, yes, it would be similar to that demo that we saw earlier where the Envoy is in the same container as the application. But we are also looking at adding a native concept of pods to Cloud Foundry, which would then make it much more natural to map the Kubernetes approach onto Cloud Foundry. But that's adding pods to Cloud Foundry is not on the. It's going to take a little while to get there. So in the meantime, we may end up running Envoys next to the application.
So is it being injected through a build pack, like through a custom build pack or
so
something?
We've explored that a little bit. The current approach is to have the runtime itself inject it. We already inject a health checking process alongside the application container, and so this is sort of a second one of those things that this orchestrator puts into the right next to the application.
Okay, so it is agnostic to the particular kind of build pack. It will work regardless of what build pack. Okay.
Yeah, that's the idea. We're trying to make it as statically compiled and not dependent on the file system as possible. I think there may be a couple small dependencies, like if you Cloud Foundry push a Docker image that's maybe missing some basic C library, something might not work. But the general idea is you should be able to drop this Envoy in next to pretty much anything, regardless of what build pack it was compiled with.
Okay. So and then you'd also set up this IP tables kind of stuff or some sort of rerouting mechanism.
That's a really good question. I think we haven't settled on whether we want to make Envoy operate as a transparent proxy in Cloud Foundry or whether we're going to instead have a different mechanism for routing, telling the application to connect through the Envoy. So Cloud Foundry already has this idea of a service binding in which an application looks inside of its environment variable to discover how to connect to a service. So that would be a natural place to inject something like a 127 address for the Envoy. Alternately, we're also exploring building a DNS system into the platform where lookups for DNS names might resolve to a 127 address that could connect to the Envoy.
Do you also use HTTP proxy environment variables, or have you I mean, we already support that, right?
Yeah, we support that, but it does not work with Node.js. Node.js does not expect HTTP proxy variable, so that's the big problem.
Yeah, the other thing is we're trying to target non-HTTP applications as well, and so making it just a TCP connection would be ideal.
Yeah, yes, I think we do have plans for supporting the non-transparent proxying mode, and so we are halfway through. As he said, like we have HTTP proxy support. We just need to be able to generate the Envoy listeners in the non-IP table equivalent format. It's a very small set of fixes that we have as to-dos, but we'll actually get to that the moment this release is done. Actually,
is there any kind of document that's tracking that work? I'd love to take a look at it.
There is an issue. I can paste it on the chat.
Thank you.
I was curious if anyone's using for Mixer development the Q package. I found it very helpful, but I have to keep a separate copy of workspace files to list all the dependencies there to do the Basel builds and tests.
If anybody is using what to do the mixer builds?
The Yosarian Go Q package.
Oh.
No, not as far as I'm aware.
Yeah.
I think all the mixer developers are using Gotland and using that script, that the symlinking script.
Cool, thanks.
If you, so, I mean, if you can just put some details in the chat, I would like to just find out what that is.
Yeah, I'll post that in there.
Thanks.
That sort of leads us to the last item that was added to the agenda about a development environment survey. I'm not actually sure who added that. We can probably arrange to send out a survey to the dev list if people are interested in that. Any other questions? All right. Well, sounds like we'll finish a little early today. Thanks everyone for getting on the call, and we will see you back here, same bad time, same bad channel in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Thanks everyone.
Thanks.